Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody. We're going to do something a little bit different for today's Mentoring Moments. We're going to take a slightly different approach. Of course, I've typically got snippets from my one-to-one mentorship calls and from my group mentorship calls that I'm able to share with you as part of our Mentoring Moments series on the e-commerce edge. However, what most of you probably don't know is that I also often get a tremendous number of DMs, emails, messages, etc., from across social media, in my email inbox, and the like. And these messages often come from people that are not necessarily comfortable going onto a group mentorship call or setting themselves up for one-on-one mentoring on an ongoing basis. But that doesn't mean that the questions that they're asking are not relevant or that I don't want to help. And I do help them as best as I possibly can. So when someone sends me a DM, if they've got a question about their career or something that they're going through, or they're looking for a job or whatever it might be, then of course I do my very best to help them. But oftentimes these questions are also representative of questions that I get asked on a regular basis and that are repetitive in the sense that lots of people have the same types of questions. And over the last few months, as I have made it pretty transparently known to my community that I was moving from New Zealand to Mexico, and now that I'm here, I'm starting to get a lot more messages from people asking me, hey, why did you move? How did you move? How did you set up your business to be able to do this? Was it difficult? What are the challenges you faced? What are the things you had to do before you went? All that sort of stuff. And what were your motivations and what was your mindset behind this? And I've just gotten quite a few questions about this whole process over the last, say, 6 months. And I felt like this was a really good topic. I felt like this was a useful topic. I felt like this was probably a helpful topic for anybody out there who has perhaps considered going out on their own, maybe leaving the corporate world or leaving the agency world or whatever it might be, and to hopefully share from my pool of experiences and hopefully to help smooth the way for anybody that is seriously considering going out on their own and either starting an agency or starting a consultancy or becoming a solopreneur or perhaps starting a side hustle with a view to, over the longer term, turning that into a main hustle and then ultimately a career, a business, a job that they can own and have control over themselves. For me, I guess where it has to start is why. What is your motivation behind wanting to do this? Now, for me personally, personal freedom means a tremendous amount to me, and I try to exercise high amounts of personal freedom in my life. I try to exercise a tremendous amount of freedom in my working life and how that fits into the life that I want to lead with myself and my beautiful wife, Sarah. And so for me, it's all about how could I go from working in an industry that I absolutely love and working as an employee or even as a co-owner in an agency, etc. How could I go from that lifestyle, which I've been doing this for nearly 23 years now. And for me, over the largest part of my career, over the lion's share of my career, I've done a fair amount of hours. If we look at the weekly hours of the various roles that I've had over the years, it ranges anywhere from 40 hours a week to, in some cases, 80, 90, in some cases, even 100 hours a week. And so in those cases, you don't have a tremendous amount of personal freedom. And as a result of that, you're not able to just live a semi-retired lifestyle. You're not able to just go and travel overseas anytime you want to. You're not able to fill up your calendar with opportunities to go and experience new things, to train and learn new things. Maybe you perhaps don't have the time to look after your body, to look after your mindset, to do the amount of exercise that you want to do, to spend time with family and friends, to exercise your pets. You just don't have, your life is much more prescriptive as opposed to inspirational and aspirational. And I wanted to move away from a situation where I felt like a prisoner of my work in some cases and a prisoner of my own lifestyle. And it was a lifestyle of my own making, of course. And we have to take responsibility and accountability for everything that's going on in our life. Otherwise, we start to feel disempowered. If we don't take ownership and responsibility of everything that's going on in our life, then it means that we are giving the power over to someone else. And we're saying we're a victim of circumstance. We're a victim of our situation. And I'm not saying that people aren't sometimes a victim of a situation, but I'm a firm believer that if you want something bad enough, you can definitely make positive steps and changes to improve your situation. Now, for me, like I said, freedom was a big part of my focus. And I guess during COVID just reinforced to me, particularly living in New Zealand, where we had some of the harshest lockdowns in the entire world and some of the longest lockdowns in the entire world. Of course, Australia and Victoria in particular did it even worse than New Zealand. We in New Zealand certainly had some of the longest lockdowns. And for over 3 years, it wasn't easy to travel out of New Zealand. I'm a big traveler, love to travel the world, love to experience new things, love to experience new people, foods, cultures, all sorts of new experiences. And so does my wife. And during COVID, we just weren't able to do that. And so we felt like we'd missed out. It was almost like there was this 3 year gap in the experiential side of our life. And so that just reinforced to me that I needed to make a change. That reinforced to me that we wanted to make concrete steps. We wanted to intentionally start to take some very concrete steps and some very concrete actions to get out of that sort of the rat race, so to speak. And we wanted to start taking steps and actions that will allow us to create a super high level of flexibility in our lives, a super high level of autonomy in our lives, a super high level of freedom in our lives in every respect, so that we never felt like we were a slave to the local government. We never felt like we were a slave financially to anyone else. We never wanted to take back a whole lot of control in our life, and single biggest motivator. And so when I left the agency space and helping to run agencies, once I left that space, my motivation was, how can I start to set up a business, a solopreneur business that allows me to have that high level of freedom that I want, but also still allows me to have the financial freedom that we need to be able to do these activities in our lives. My wife and I are very much about activities and experiences over things. So we've never been the type of people that wanted to collect a whole bunch of stuff and try to keep up with the Joneses in terms of the things that we own and the lifestyle that we live visually to other people. For us, it's all about how can we create a lifestyle where we can have the most experiences, the fun, the impact on the world, the positive impact on the world, the most positive impact on the world we can have, whilst at the same time enriching ourselves, educating ourselves, and becoming better humans in the process. And then as a byproduct of that, I know from my own personal experience that the broader set of life experiences that I've had over the years, the better that has made me at business, the better that has made me as a consultant, the better it has helped me to understand consumer psychology and so many other things that are super important as part of the work that I do in my industry. And it also allows me to give back to my industry in new ways with new experiences that my audience don't have to go out and have those experiences themselves, that they can hopefully benefit from some of the learnings I've had along the way, and sending the elevator back down again to my industry. So that's how we got here. And so what we did when I left the agency space was to intentionally create a business that was 100% portable, that basically it's interesting because our industry has pretty much always been able to work remotely. If you work in the e-commerce space, whether that's as a merchant, whether that's as an agency, whether that's a freelancer, whether that's as a technology vendor, any of us that work in the tech space, not necessarily just specifically e-commerce, but if you work in the tech space, you've pretty much been able to be remote for easily over a decade. But there was always an expectation, at least in the agency space, the consulting space, et cetera, that customers would meet you at least one time in person before they shook your hand and signed on the dotted line. They wanted to be able to eyeball you. They wanted to be able to feel the vibe. They wanted to be able to see whether there was going to be a connection there that allowed them to work with you. Now, the one upshot, the benefit, the silver lining of COVID is the fact that nowadays customers typically have zero expectation that they will ever see you in person, and therefore they're very happy to meet with you via video conference from the very first meeting moving forward. And then if they decide and you feel that you're a great fit for them, then they can sign on the dotted line and start working with you remotely. And you may never, ever meet with them in person. And so if there's any silver lining out of COVID, that's it from my perspective, is that now I get messages on LinkedIn from potential new customers all the time, where they sign up with my Calendly to have an initial pre-discovery call to see if we're a good fit together. And it just makes it so much easier because we can form a relationship. They've oftentimes followed my content for a long period of time, so they know what I'm about. They know the services I offer. They understand what kind of personality I am, and that I can bring hopefully some positive disruption to their business and make them look at the world through a new lens and see business in a new way. And so those silver linings have meant that it is now more feasible and more possible than ever before to build a fully remote business that doesn't tie you to any one country, location, region, one office. space. And so as a result of that, I think COVID has helped to create this opportunity, not only for myself, but anybody else in our industry that is looking to make a serious change and to give themselves more physical freedom in terms of the physical location they work from. Then this is more possible than ever before. And I'm extremely thankful for COVID in that regard. Now, what we did is I knew that when I left the agency space and I started out with my own consultancy firm and was building that up, I knew that what I wanted to do was to give myself the most financial runway possible, because it always takes time. But when you're a new startup, most startups fail for a start off. And then two, the startups that survive, it always takes a bit of time before you start seeing traction. And particularly with consulting, it always takes a little bit of time to get the word out that you now are available for consulting, you've started a consulting business, that you now are available to take on clients independent of whatever previous role that you held. And so for me, what that entailed was to try to cut our living expenses to the absolute bone, to give us as much financial runway as possible to build up a nice portfolio of clients that were a great fit for me, and I was a great fit for them from a consulting perspective. And that just took time. I planned on a 6 to 12 month period of building up a portfolio of clients that was able to then effectively my previous salary and income from previous roles. And luckily, it didn't take that long. Luckily, within 6 months, I had a really good portfolio of amazing clients that I've been able to work with, and I've been able to take on a bunch of new clients since then. And so it didn't take as long as I thought it might. And so I'm really thankful for that. But we just set ourselves up to cut our living costs down to the bone. We were living in a tiny house. We were mortgage free. We were debt free. The only fixed costs that we really had, we owned our vehicles outright. We paid cash for those. So we didn't have car payments to make. We didn't have a mortgage payment to make. Really, the only expenses, the fixed expenses that we had were really food and land rent, where our tiny house was parked. Our tiny house on wheels was parked. And so we'd really cut. There's always the odd living expense over that. We're off grid and we're on solar, but occasionally you'd need to run the generator, so you need petrol for that and that sort of thing. But overall, we really just cut our living expenses down to the land rent for the land we were renting and groceries and being able to feed ourselves. And so that really, what that did is it gave me the mental and emotional freedom and capacity to focus on building my business, to be able to focus on building out products and services, or services that could be productized for my customers that would add tremendous value. It also allowed me to define my niche. It allowed me time to think and to process what kind of ICP, or ideal customer profile, I wanted to be working with and who I thought I could help them with based on my skills and experience. And so it really just gave me the bandwidth more than anything else to focus on building my business in the smartest way possible, and to putting in operational processes that cut down on the overhead, the administrative overhead of actually running the business, so that I could focus on giving my clients the best possible experience that I could deliver for them. And obviously, it gave me an opportunity to focus on putting out more content more frequently on LinkedIn. It allowed me to create some relationships with some agency partners and vendor partners, and to do all the things that you need to do to build a business, particularly the type of business that I built, which is a consulting business. And so it allowed me to do all those things without the worry about, are we going to be able to pay for our next months of living expenses? Am I going to have to go out and get a job soon if I can't be able to pay for our lifestyle? And so that would be my first suggestion. Now, we don't have kids. My wife and I don't have kids. We don't want kids, but some of you do have kids. Many of you will have kids. And so there will be some additional challenges there in terms of how to extend your financial runway before you make the leap from perhaps salaried employment to self-employment, or building up your side hustle. You're going to have to think about, okay, how much money do we need to have in the bank? How much runway do we want to build to give ourselves the peace of mind that we're not leaping off into the abyss with kind of no plan, with no safety net? And so what I would recommend is looking at building up savings of around at least 6 months of living expenses. So 6 to 12 months. If you can come up with 12 months of living expenses in the bank and cash, all the better. But I would say at least 6 months, because it's going to take you 6 months at least in most scenarios for you to start securing clients, for you to start generating income on your own. I was doing a bit of consulting on the side as a bit of a side hustle, but it certainly wasn't able to replace my full-time income at the start. And so I had to give myself that runway, that financial runway, to give me that bandwidth to think about how to set up my business in the most efficient way possible, and to actually build up a pipeline of clients and prospects. And so I would say save up at least 6 months worth of financial runway to where you can cover all of your monthly expenses very comfortably for at least 6 months before you make the leap into self-employment or starting up your own business. From there, what you need to do is to take that free time to make sure that you are finding the absolute best level of product market fit possible. And what that's going to take is going to take a lot of conversations. It's going to take conversations with your clients and your prospects to ensure that what you are putting together in terms of your service offering is actually what the market wants and what the market needs. Now, I was a little bit lucky in the sense that because I was already working in the industry, because I was already working in agencies, so I'd already worked on the merchant side, because I'd already worked closely with many tech vendors over the years and had deep relationships in our industry. And because I had seen a steady flow of merchants come into agencies that I had worked for, and just in the conversations that I'd been having with the industry over the years, I knew that there was a huge gap in our industry for B2B e-commerce consultants specifically, and also secondarily for D2C e-commerce consultants. There just was not a lot out there. Most of the consultants in the market were heavily focused on B2C. They were heavily focused on D2C, but there were very few consultants, if any, out there that were focused on B2B and the complexities that B2B merchants encounter when they're looking to set up their e-commerce channel and digital channels, full stop. The other thing that I saw in the industry and recognized a gap was that most of the e-commerce consultants in the market, they didn't really know how to consult on, or they didn't have experience with the full commerce technology stack. So they didn't have experience with ERP. They didn't have experience with CRMs or CDPs or PIMs or warehouse management systems, order management systems, all the operational technologies that are really required to create a seamless end-to-end digital experience. They didn't have experience with those technologies. I was very fortunate in that I did have experience with all of those technologies through merchant work that I'd done, through consulting work, from agency land that I had done, and also implementing it as a merchant myself. So in previous roles, I had the very thankful for the opportunity that I had to be able to implement ERPs and CRMs and PIMs, etc., and also to create system integrations between all these systems, including point of sale, to create a seamless end-to-end customer experience. And so that level of experience showed me that there were many consultants out there that could perhaps consult from a marketing perspective on the front end experience of a website, the UX, the UI, the apps. They could consult maybe on the e-commerce platform of choice that would fit a business's needs and requirements. And they might even be able to do some scoping and some light solutioning. But from an end-to-end solution architecture perspective, there was just a massive gap in the market. And I had seen this developing for years. And so oftentimes merchants would rely on their agencies to have this level of experience, and some agencies do, but typically they don't specialize in that messy front-end consulting. They want a fully formed BRD or business requirements document, or at least they ideally like to have the merchants have a very clear picture of their requirements when they hit the agency, so that they can rapidly scope the solution and get it in production as fast as possible, because most agencies make money out of the development side of the business, not on the consulting or project management or account management sides of the business. They make it, the engine room is the production side of the business. The engine room is the development side of the business. And typically, if you look at their headcount by role type, most e-commerce agencies that are not marketing specific agencies, that are dev agencies, by headcount, they have more developers than any other role in the business. So of course, that's the part of the business that they can scale. But for me, I saw that there was this massive opportunity in those two key areas: was B2B consulting and also full stack commerce solution consulting. And I saw that if we looked at the people, the process, the tech, and the data, if we could look at those four key areas as part of the consulting services that we wanted to provide to the market, then I knew that we would have a ready-made pool of prospects there that needed that level of servicing. Now, you may not know that. You may not have as deep of industry experience as I was very fortunate and lucky to have when I struck out on my own. You will need to do some form of market research if you don't have that background, if you don't have a really clear view of what the market opportunity is for you to service, if you don't have a really clear view on how you can go into a blue ocean space versus a red ocean space. Look that up if you don't know what that term means. And I always wanted to go into a blue ocean space. I didn't want to go and just be another e-commerce consultant out there competing with all the other myriad e-commerce consultants out there, specifically consulting in the B2C space. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to consult on the more vanilla, more generic e-commerce environments that often are out there. And so I wanted to do something that was quite distinct, quite different, and find that gap and really go into that blue ocean space where I wanted to set up the game to where I was the automatic default winner, because there was really no one else doing exactly what I do and the way I do it. And so I would urge you to do the same thing. I would urge you to try to find where there's some blue ocean space, where you will effectively have no competition, where you will stand out by definition of what you do and how you do it, and the types of products and services that you come up with and how you deliver them to the market. And then the final piece is really, how do you get the word out? How do you start getting the word out and start to build up some credibility in your space so that you can then build a successful and sustainable business that you're not having to go out and pay for pipeline with performance marketing and the like, and having to spend the earth on trying to secure new customers or to pay a BDR or a BDM to go out there and try to solicit business on your behalf. The only way I know how to do that is really through content. And so I had luckily been building up an audience. I'd been putting out content about our space and about my experience in our space. I'd been doing that for a good 5-6 years before I ever went out on my own. And so I had an audience of, at the time, I think I had about 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. I've got over 30,000 now. And so I had a reasonable sized audience in the spaces where I was able to educate them about just giving out generic knowledge based on my experience, giving it out freely with no expectation of return. And of course, when I first started putting out content, I had no idea how that would eventually benefit me. I just knew that the only way in this new world, as of today, it's very difficult to get attention without being visible. And where are people congregating today to consume content? What's on social media, of course, isn't it? And so I just started putting out content, not knowing exactly where this was going to lead, definitely not trying to put myself out there as a thought leader necessarily, but just knowing that I had some quite independent thoughts. I had some unique thoughts. I had some unique experiences that I wanted to share with the world that will hopefully benefit the world, not knowing if or when I would ever be able to, quote unquote, monetize that content or monetize my audience. That was never my goal. My goal was to just share freely from my knowledge, hopefully build out a series of connections out in the world that could become professional connections that hopefully I could help them. And then in the future, if maybe I got stuck or maybe I was looking for a job or something like that, then maybe they would be able to help me as well. And so hopefully being able to build up those reciprocal relationships with a decent sized network of people was really my ultimate goal in the beginning. And luckily, as I did that, as I slowly built up a bit more of a reputation in the space, as I hate that term thought leader, but hopefully I was coming out with some original thoughts. I was putting those out in the world for open critique. And that was starting to show the world my experience. It was starting to share with the world my expertise. And it was starting to share with the world my learnings that they could benefit from. And so that started to build up my audience. Now, of course, as that audience continued to grow and as I started to build out and form those relationships with people that would become deep professional friends over the years, of course, that by definition, that automatically helped me when I went out on my own, because it wasn't like I had zero audience to tell, hey, I'm out there in the world, this is what I'm doing. I could put it on my LinkedIn profile that now had my own consulting firm. And when people would look at my content or go and visit my profile, they then could see that I had my own business. And if they felt like there was a good fit or that they had a need that I could help them with, then of course they would reach out, usually via DM, and say, hey, let's have a chat. I think you can help us out. And so, of course, that audience that I had put so much investment into for years and years and years, of course, that helped me out. But that wasn't the original goal. And so I would say that, I guess, very similar to what Gary Vaynerchuk says, the longer you can wait to monetize your audience, the better. The more valuable your audience will be. So for all those years, for years and years, I just put out content with no sales intent. There was no hook. There was no link at the end saying, hey, come and book a chat with me. There was no, hey, I've got this deal. I got this promotion. I've got whatever. There was no sales pitch as part of my content. Was purely educational and hopefully somewhat entertaining. That was the goal of my content: education and entertainment. That was it. And of course, when I started to make it known that I was now available for consulting work, of course, that was beneficial to a certain percentage. But even if it was a tiny percentage, if you've got 30,000 highly engaged followers and 1, 2, 3% of those are potentially a good fit for your new business, that's a pretty solid pipeline to start with. And then, of course, through my relationships with agencies and vendor partners, et cetera, of course, that became also a source of pipeline once they knew that I was doing consulting work, because, of course, I had great working relationship through many years in the industry. And so that helped as well. So I would say drill down on your niche, try to make sure that you are going into a blue ocean space, try to build an audience as best you can with no expectation of anything in return. Just try to put out the best possible content that you can. Try to be as visible across as many social channels as you possibly can, with trying to create content that will be beneficial to your target market. I think that's really important. Now, sometimes probably 80% of my content is focused at individuals or organizations that would benefit from my services, of course. So I'm talking about content. I'm putting out content that will benefit the types of organizations and people that would naturally benefit from also working with me. But it's not a sales pitch. It's just putting out content to demonstrate expertise. And then it's their choice whether they reach out to me and want to work with me because they see value in my content. Therefore, they may see value in actually working directly one-to-one with me. So that would be my goal. That would be my recommendation if I was you. I would start building an audience online however and wherever I can. Obviously, I built up, if you listen to this, you know that I've got a podcast. I started a podcast, again, with no expectation of anything commercially valuable coming out of that apart from building my reputation and my name in the industry as somebody who has expertise and could potentially benefit organizations by working with me. That's it. And so I started putting out content on LinkedIn, was publishing virtually every single day for years and years, was putting out content through the podcast once a week, and then that moved to twice a week, and we're going to move to potentially even more this year. Then also started to adopt some other channels, putting out content, a small amount of content on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and also YouTube Shorts. And I tried to be as present in as many places as I felt was possible for me to put out good content that was contextually relevant on those channels. So trying to put out content specifically for those channels that would resonate with an audience on those channels, and then usually and generally directing them back ultimately to my LinkedIn profile so that they could learn more about me and then reach out to me if they felt it was valuable to them. And so that would be my recommendation. My recommendation would be starting to build up an audience before you need it. That's what I did. My audience was with me long, long before I ever started my own consulting business. And so that would be my recommendation, is to start to build up that content muscle. Even if it's uncomfortable for you, pick the type of content that you're the most comfortable making, whether it's written, long form, short form content, whether it's video content, whether it's audio content like a podcast, whatever it is that you're the most comfortable making on a routine basis, meaning daily, or at least I would say pick a content type that you can put out content at least 3 times a week minimum, and go with that first. And pick a platform you're most confident with, that you're the most comfortable with. If it's LinkedIn, maybe it's LinkedIn. If it's TikTok, use TikTok. If it's Instagram, it doesn't really matter where you're putting out content, so long as you're comfortable putting out the type of content that gets consumed on that platform, and you're comfortable with the usage of that platform, and you can put out content consistently 3 to 4 times a week. Start there. Start building your content creation muscle. Luckily, when you first start out, you'll have a small audience because your content will be pretty crap in the beginning until you get some experience and confidence putting out that content. But luckily, you won't have an audience. And so therefore, you're building that content muscle in public. Not many people will see it, but as you put out more and more content, you will get better at producing that content. You will get better at articulating your thoughts. You will get better at coming up with topics and themes that will resonate with your audience, and being able to put out that content consistently. And so as you continue to get better, your audience will grow in tandem with that. And so with intention, follow other accounts with intention, interact with other accounts with intention, go and comment, go and like other people's content, support other people's content with thoughtful commentary, thoughtful engagement. That will expose your profile to all the other people in that same thread. Follow people that have already got decent sized followings. Follow people that you like and trust and respect, and that are likely to have an audience overlap with the type of audience you're looking to build, with the interests that you have interest in. Engagement is such a key part of building an audience. I would say that at least 50% of my audience building has come from the engagement with other people's accounts, with other people's posts, with other people's comment threads, with other people's, basically everything that they do. I try to engage, I try to add value, and the great thing is, if you're engaging with even smaller accounts than yours, then you are lending your voice. So now that I've got over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, when I comment on someone's thread or on one of their posts, it brings attention. It brings a huge amount of attention, because a certain percentage of my audience will see my content on that post and expose that content to my audience. And so by effectively paying it forward, when you get a decent sized audience, you want to pay that forward, and you want to continue to build your audience on the back of engagement with other people and bringing value to other people, not just selfishly bringing attention just to yourself and just to your own post. So that would be my next piece of advice. Then there are some operational considerations. When you look at moving overseas, do you have to think about tax requirements? Are you thinking about, does your home country allow you to be non-tax resident once you've left the country? Then do you have to think about taxes in whatever country you're looking at moving to or traveling to? Can you set up your headquarters? Can you re-domicile your business into a low-tax environment, to a low-tax regime country? Or lots of operational things to think about. How are you going to, even from a personal funds perspective, how are you going to move your personal funds around the world without getting killed on foreign exchange fees and bank fees and ATM fees, etc.? I would encourage you to look at Wise. They have a fantastic international service whereby you can get an international debit card, and their foreign exchange fees are amongst the cheapest in the world. And you can, of course, withdraw money from ATMs internationally and use their rates, which are, again, some of the best in the world. And there's just some operational things. And of course, you've then got to think about if you want to start traveling, as we have decided to. We want to spend a tremendous amount of our time traveling, but we've made our home in Mexico. And so if you're thinking about moving overseas, you got to think about where is it that we think might make a good new home. Now, I was a bit lucky because I moved from the United States to New Zealand in my early 20s. And so I was born and raised in Southern California, and then I moved to New Zealand in my early 20s. My grandfather was a Kiwi, so my parents and my sister and myself were able to get dual citizenship, and we moved there to get out of the United States and experience something different. Ended up staying there nearly 30 years in New Zealand. As we contemplated moving overseas again, my wife had only ever lived in New Zealand. And so, of course, it's intimidating. It's a bit scary. If you've never lived in another country, it's always a bit scary contemplating moving out of the familiar into the unfamiliar. But it was important enough for us to take that leap of faith and to make that move. And even though we've only been in Mexico for just over a week now, we love it so far. We're going to travel around for a year before we decide where to settle. My wife will have huge input. In fact, I'd say she'll have the lioness's share of input on where we ultimately decide to settle. But for you may not decide to move overseas, but you may simply decide that, hey, I want to travel 25% of the year. I want to travel 3, 4, 5, 6 months out of the year. And I want to set up my business to where I can be fully portable in that sense. And so therefore, I want to be able to have basically, as long as I've got my laptop and I've got internet, speaking for me personally, if I've got my laptop and I've got internet, I can run my business from anywhere. And that's absolutely amazing. And so if that's important to you to have that level of freedom as well, to where you're not in an office, you don't need an office, then structure your business that way, structure your operations that way, structure your product offering, your service offering in exactly that way. With internet and laptops these days, it's pretty easy to build a portable business. You may have to work in some unfriendly time zones to where you're at that time to make sure and continue to service your customers. Oftentimes I'm taking consulting calls very late at night or very early in the morning to accommodate my client needs. But that's one of the small prices that you pay for being effectively a digital nomad, where you can actually work from anywhere. So hopefully some of these experiences that I've had and some of these things that I've talked about will be beneficial to you. If you are considering moving overseas, my strong recommendation would be to sell virtually everything that you have in your home country before moving to a new home country. A lot of people make the mistake, and we did when we first moved from the United States to New Zealand. We brought a couple shipping containers worth of crap with us from the United States because we wanted to effectively bring furniture and all sorts of stuff with us. That turned out to be a massive mistake, and sometimes you only learn these things through experience. But my advice would be pretty much only take what you can carry on your back and in a couple of suitcases, because what you have in your old environment may not be suitable. And in fact, it most often is not going to be suitable in your new environment, from clothes to furniture to appliances to just about everything. They're oftentimes going to be quite different in the place that you're moving to from where you came from. And so oftentimes the transport costs, particularly now as of 2023, logistic costs are through the roof. And so therefore, just the cost alone of moving your stuff from your old place to the new place is probably going to outweigh any benefit or cost savings you would have of not having to rebuy new stuff on the other end. And of course, in the new place that you're going to, you don't necessarily have to buy everything new. You can buy secondhand stuff as well. But there's always trade-offs. Whenever you go traveling, whenever you move overseas, there's always trade-offs. There's the upside of learning, being challenged in new ways and learning a whole bunch of new things and new cultures and all the rest. But my advice would be save the hassle, save the pain. It's very cathartic to get rid of most of your stuff before you go. Sell stuff, give stuff away, throw stuff away that's past its use by date. Do everything in your power to lighten your mental and emotional load of stuff, and just take stuff that you think is actually going to benefit you on the other end of the road. Hopefully this information has been helpful for you. If you like this particular episode and you'd like to talk to me more about this, or if you'd like me to share a bit more from my experiences as I go and follow me on Instagram, go and follow me on TikTok. I put a bit more personal stuff there than what I do directly on the podcast or on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn obviously has a professional bent. So go and follow me on those other more lighthearted channels or more personal channels, and you'll hopefully see more of my daily life. And then also, if you'd like me to do more podcasts about this, let me know. Let me know via DM on any of those social channels. Flick me an email if you found this episode interesting. And then finally, go ahead and sign up for either my one-to-one mentorship and or group mentorship program. If you go to greenwoodconsulting.net and then you go down to the very bottom of the homepage there, you can see Get Mentored. And if you click on that, it'll give you all the mentorship program information. You can join my mentorship programs for free. I've also got a free Slack mentorship channel as well, which you can sign up to directly from that mentorship page on my website. So hopefully this has been super helpful for you. I know it's been a little bit long-winded, but because I've been getting so many messages and questions about this whole motivation for moving in the first place, etc., and how I did it and how I even put myself in the position of being able to do this, I felt like some of these key points would hopefully help you jumpstart getting more familiar, taking the steps, and hopefully giving you the stepping stones that will get you to a place where you've got a whole lot more personal, financial, and location-based freedoms in your life. Got any questions? Flick them through to me. I'd love to hear from you. Talk to you guys soon. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.